if White thinks that God does have the power to save all people via his irresistible grace, yet chooses to not give it to people, although he could, he's got the power to do it, but he chooses then to not give it to people and thus to torture the vast amount of humanity into the Holocaust of eternal hell, into the infinite future. I mean, gosh, like I said, that seems far worse than what White finds objectionable on the Molinist view. And moreover, think about this. Well, this view advanced by some Molinists, it's not nearly as problematic as the view that White's advancing. So consider the fact that Dr. White's view entails that possible worlds exist where all humans are saved, right? So Dr. White, his big beef with Molinism, or at least with this subset of Molinism, a view that a Molinist could hold, is that there's some people who God cannot save. Who he's saying, well, if God's omnipotent, he's got to be able to force everybody into a true love relationship. They don't like the word force, but I can defend that if I need to. But causally determined. Okay, so yeah, so White is saying an omnipotent God has to have the power to save everybody, right? He could have universalism if he wants it. Okay, well, let that sink in. On White's view, it entails that there is possible worlds existing where all humans are saved. That is to say that God has the power to save all humans from the horrors of eternal hell. But God chose to actualize a world in which the majority of humanity suffers in hell into the infinite future. I mean, that to me seems far worse than what he thinks the fatal blow to Molinism is. Right? Dr. White is saying, well, God, he has the power to save everybody. Well, then why doesn't he? That seems worse to me. It seems to me that White is making a mountain out of a Molinist molehill, while being unaware of the Mount Everest of a self-defeating problem his own view entails. So I mean, think about it. Using White's same logic. If White thinks that God does have the power to save all people via his irresistible grace, yet chooses to not give it to people, although he could, he's got the power to do it. But he chooses then to not give it to people and thus to torture the vast amount of humanity into the Holocaust of eternal hell, into the infinite future. I mean, gosh, like I said, that seems far worse than what White finds objectionable on the Molinist view. And really, this raises an argument. I think I mentioned it earlier. I crafted it. When did I craft it? I think I first made it public in 2015. I probably crafted it when I was still at Biola, 2013, 2014. I have to think about that. But I think it was 2015 when I first kind of shared it publicly. And it was on Richard Eng's old website called FreeThinking Ministries. And that kind of gave me the idea for FreeThinking Ministries. But anyway, this was before I started FreeThinking Ministries. So I published it on Richard's website, and James White caught wind of it the next day and immediately brought it up on his show back then. I remember him saying that he'd never heard of me before. He goes, I don't know who Tim Stratton is, which fair enough. I wasn't really writing back then. But what was funny that he said, or at least I found it humorous, is in the article he was responding to, I was talking about how I was a former Calvinist. And that's true. I did used to be a Calvinist. I was a cage stage Calvinist for a while. But Dr. White on his show back then in 2015 said Stratton was never really a Calvinist. Well, he'd never heard of me before. How does he know? And I said, well, tell that to my wife. If you want to read a sad but true but kind of funny article, again, on freethinkingministries.com, it's called Molinism Saves Marriages. And I discuss how, as a cage stage Calvinist myself, when we first got married, and my wife was more of an Arminian, These are issues that we kind of swept under the rug while we were dating. Then when we got married and started doing ministry together, man, it caused a lot of fights. I preached Calvinism. I'd argue with anybody about Calvinism, and that includes my wife. The only time I ever slept on the couch in my marriage is because of this issue. So yeah, don't tell me that I wasn't a Calvinist. I was, which raises the question: if God causally determines all things all the time, why would He causally determine me to have it right for years, and then turn the switch, so to speak, and make me change my mind to affirm a false belief, which raises so many other problems? Because if exhaustive divine determinism is true, then that means that God causally determines everybody's thoughts and beliefs all the time, every single one of them, ultimately causally determined by God. But I bet Dr. White would agree with me that he's not an infallible theologian. I will agree. I will affirm that nobody's theology is perfect. Well, what follows from that? That means that if God causally determines every thought and belief, and even Christians and Calvinists don't have perfect theology, that means that God causally determines every person to affirm false theological beliefs. And then you aren't in a position to know which of your theological beliefs are true and which of your theological beliefs are false. And so it very well might be the fact that you think exhaustive divine determinism is true. Maybe that's the one that God is causally determining you to think is true when it's actually false. You wouldn't be in a position to know.